And welcome into the Radio Days edition of Now and Next. This week, got to sit in with my friend Gene Valaitis at CKTB in St. Catharines. Hello, Gene. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, Dave, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I collected hockey cards and baseball. So did you ever do that?
Oh, yeah. I've got the, there was the Beehive Honey cans, and when I was a kid, my dad used to take the labels and he sent them in, and you would get these really cool 5x7 black and whites. This was before the hockey cards in the package with gum, and I've still got like a half a dozen of them framed on my wall here. One of them is Gordie Howe, and it's signed, it's autographed. So yes.
Oh, right. Well, I remember with hockey cards and baseball cards, we usually get all the guys and girls in the neighborhood, and we go into somebody's backyard, and you get all your cards out, and you would do the got it, need it, need it. Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, I think that's going to be happening at the World Cup. Thanks to a Freedom of Information request, it has now been revealed that the Toronto Public Health Department has spent over $200,000 on condoms and packages of sexual lubricant. But Dave, here's the good part. They come in 6 different designs. So I'm just wondering, well, instead of exchanging pins like athletes do at events like the World Cup and the Olympics, will people be sitting around with their condoms saying, got 'em, need 'em, got 'em, need 'em? And will they not use them because they want to go home with these collector quality, really super taxpayer paid condoms for the World Cup?
Yeah, I can see a lovely framed collection, right beside your participant ribbon at the the Olympics. All of those things that go together. The whole idea of this is kind of silly, just in as much as really we're branding them, around the World Cup. I think it only works though, Gene, if the package is blind, so you don't know which one you're getting.
Oh, so now we have to open them up.
Gotta open them up.
Open them up.
Yeah.
Now, kids, if you're going to be collecting these condoms, don't collect them if you're going to use them. Just a word to the wise there.
Don't keep them after you use. You mean?
You know what? I'm so glad I no longer live in Toronto. Could you imagine $200,000 for condoms at 21 cents for the rubbers and 15 cents for the little packages of lubes? And obviously they were trying to hide it because it required a Freedom of Information request to find out. Oh my goodness. 576,000 branded condoms. Here we come. Got them, need them, got them.
But here's the problem with the story, though, G. I mean, yes, you've rung all the right bells here, but buried at the bottom of the story, they're talking about the incidence of sexually transmitted disease, chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, etc. It was up, it counts for 64% of all of the diseases public health reports to in Toronto in 2024. That number went up to 81% in 2025. So I'm just, kind of connecting dots here. Does that mean we saw an increase in sexually transmitted diseases around the World Series and nobody did anything about it? I mean, seriously, we didn't have this kind of campaign when all the millions of people were coming to Toronto for the World Series for the Blue Jays, but now we're doing it for the World Cup. And if the numbers are that high, that is a sign of complete and utter failure on behalf of the Toronto Public Health folks, and somehow thinking that we're going to actually salve this thing by handing out free condoms during the World Cup over a 6-week period is going to make any dent in the public health issue. I think there's a bigger problem here.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, my goodness. Got him, need him, got him. Hey, I see where former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien and Mr. Harper met up in Ottawa yesterday, an event hosted by the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. And they called on national unity. The leaders of the opposition and government during that waste of time called question period get nothing accomplished. But now retired prime ministers are calling on national unity. I don't know. I saw a bit of it, read about it in the Globe. Well, man, what a waste of time.
Yeah, but you know what I think is important here is that you've got two guys who were, diametrically opposed in terms of their politics, but they can sit on the stage at this stage in their lives and actually come to terms and be very frank and honest about where this country needs to be, where it should be. There's no kind of partisan vitriol baked into that. There's a lesson to be learned here from both of them, and you couldn't have two more sort of diverse characters than Jean Chrétien and Stephen Harper. Can you imagine Harper engaging in the Shawinigan handshake? It wouldn't work, right? So. And even the idea that, Prime Minister Harper's sense of humor completely different than Chrétien's. So I think there's some hope and optimism here in terms of being elder statesmen, and that, in fact, at some level, the current crew of politicians on both sides, on all sides of the legislature, can take a note from this. And, even when we look at what happened in Calgary on the weekend with Pierre Poilevre, everybody's waving the flag saying, oh my God, he's changed his tone. But has he changed his stripe? And this would be a really good example of, why he probably should be considering that from the what's good for Canada and, in fact, what might be good for his party.
Yeah. We'll get to Calgary and the change in tone from Mr. Poilievre. But I think it was foreshadowed at the Ottawa Press Gallery dinner a couple of months ago. Pierre gave a pretty funny speech, actually. And he said that he went to a consultant and they said to help out his image, he should become softer around the edges, relate more to people, be more relatable, or buy a dog. And he said he called the consultant back and he said, what kind of a dog should I get?
Exactly.
But you know what? I mean, you talk about the vitriol and stuff like that. If we really want to get national unity, given everything that Trump has done, maybe the current leaders should take a bit of a clue from yesterday's meeting, and maybe they in the government and the opposition should both start acting that way right now, as opposed to what they do in question period.
Yeah, I agree. I think some of that, though, was evident in the First Minister's meeting last week, because before that meeting, Doug Ford was all bangry about the EVs coming into Canada and how it was going to wreck the economy and wreck our auto sector and everything else. And he was just, we need to boycott, being very aggressive. Then he sat down, had pizza, as you and I pointed out last week, with the Prime Minister, and everything was good. They got to the meeting last week. Everything was good. He and, the New Brunswick's Premier Holt, they're kind of doing the kumbaya around the opening up the port in New Brunswick. The MOU with Alberta and the feds is all good. I love Wob Canoe, save the Crown Royal, don't spill the good stuff kind of thing. Yeah. They all seem to kind of tone it down. At least the First Ministers, I think, might be taking the cue, as you suggest.
Yeah. We're going to take a bit of a break for the news. When we return, a little more on Pierre Poilevre and his speech, which was very emotional for a change. We want to talk about Doug Ford. Is he really going after a fourth term? And because Dave and I like to talk about sports, got to mention that Joe Carter is getting his very own statue down at the Sky Dome, and the Olympics start. And oh boy, CRA is misbehaving like I have never seen it before. We'll get Dave's take on these and more in just a second. Dave Trafford is with us. It's a Tuesday. We're back in a sec on 610 CKTB, Niagara's News and Talk. I'm Gene Valaitis. Get a hold of me at 905-688-2582. And I always tell you this every morning. I read every single text that comes in. I try to respond. And if your text is good and it doesn't suck, I'll read it on the air. Podcaster and investigative journalist and all-around good guy Dave Trafford joins us every Tuesday morning, and we chat about various things. Hey, Dave, just getting back to the Calgary Conservative deal back on Friday. I was surprised with Poilievre's speech. He talked about being away from his family and how his son draws him a photo of Spider-Man to protect him on the road, and he talked about kissing his wife and his kids a good night, usually over FaceTime. And then at another point in his speech, he revealed that his autistic daughter spoke for the very first time. And I was watching the speech and I was saying, where has this guy been hiding? And I was wondering, had he been like that in the last campaign, would he have been the winner?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think that's one of those things that they're struggling with as far as the conservative war room is concerned. I mean, on the one hand, to say 87.4% he got from his, the delegate faithful that showed up for the convention, good, and that probably exceeded expectation in some respects. But again, that's the core of the conservatives. And interestingly enough, the messaging that he presented in that speech, Gene, was not the tone and messaging that necessarily appeals to the base. So it's kind of an interesting, juxtaposition there. But you're right. But here's the question. Is it enough to do that once at the conservative convention? Does he actually change tone? Does he actually change his posture in question period, which is where, he uses all of his fancy bumper sticker labels and his rhyming couplets and all of that stuff that goes along with his criticism of the government. It's the tone that really kind of gets under people's skin. Can he get away from that and seem to be more eye level and personal? And I think that's going to be the real challenge for him and certainly strategists for the Conservative Party.
Keep them away from apples is my recommendation.
Exactly.
Hey, Dave, I want to talk about the Canada Revenue Agency. And, every year when you submit your taxes at the bottom of the page, you have to sign and say it's all true or you can be prosecuted by law. Well, the CRA's second annual report on employee misconduct and wrongdoing has just been released. They recorded 370 cases of misconduct, including insubordination, time theft, inappropriate work behavior, and unauthorized access to taxpayer information. Since 2023, more than 300 CRA employees have been fired for ripping off the CERB program. And in this report, employees are accused of mishandling calls, well, if you can ever get through, sleeping on duty, watching Pornhub and Netflix, inappropriate physical contact, receiving CRA funds into personal accounts using CRA credit cards. Employees also manipulated timesheets to claim as many as 1,352 extra hours, while others created fake meetings to prevent their computers from turning off to give the impression that they were working. What is going on at the CRA?
Well, you got to give some of them credit for ingenuity and innovation. I mean, that whole idea of setting up the computer and walking away and having everybody think you're still at work, that's pretty good. I got to give them credit for that.
But falling asleep, I mean, we just did the news. Could you imagine if we came back and I'm like...
Well, maybe that's the guy who's on the phone, and that's why you can't get through too. But here's the thing: these numbers the incidents are more than outrageous. When you start to look at it, I have to laugh though. There's a graph in here that talks about failure to protect CRA's reputation, and I mean, really, that's a low bar, right? Yeah. So, but here's who's paying attention to this? I realize it's only the second annual, but at some point, if there's a real problem here, then I think, there needs to be more accountability further up. But when you look at the numbers, there's 52,000 people who work for the CRA. So relatively speaking, this is a drop in the bucket statistically in terms of the numbers of staffers who are doing this. But it's gotta be happening in plain view, right? I mean,
of course,
right? So the only way that this gets reported is because Gene saw Dave fall asleep at his desk next to him.
I mean, how do you watch Pornhub and not be caught? I don't know.
Yeah, well, again, good innovation, I suppose. There's a real thinker.
Innovation, yeah. More of your tax dollars hard at work. I see where our Governor General, who doesn't speak both official languages, she got her another pay raise. She's now making $400,000 a year. She can bill up to $130,000 for clothing. She gets an annual pension after she stops cutting ribbons at hospitals of $150,000 a year, and she can bill up to $200,000 every year for the rest of her life, and even 6 months after she is dead. We need a culture change in Ottawa. This sense of entitlement has got to go.
Well, it's legislatively, that's kind of baked into the law, right? So, and if you want to change that, then Parliament gets to do that. If they want to change the Governor General's Act, then go ahead and do that. And her or any GG's pay increase is just dictated by legislation, and there's no argument about it. There's nothing else. So on the one hand, I don't have a problem with people who put themselves up into public service being reasonably well paid and so on. I have an issue when we start to say, we're going to freeze MPs or MPPs or city councilors' pay because it's, the populist right thing to do in terms of, how other people live. And in Ontario, that has posed real problems for some MPPs and so on. And I just don't think it's fair. But on the other hand, MPPs or politicians shouldn't be voting for their own pay increases. So if we're going to do this, I think the positive in any of this is that if there is any kind of benefit increase or any kind of pay increase, that it should be legislated and just set on automatic, and you just go ahead and let it happen. And if it decides that we want to change it, then universally legislatively step in and make the changes to it. So I don't think we can blame the Governor General herself for this. I think that culturally it's baked in at a parliamentary level.
Conservatives here in Ontario got together for a little powwow over the weekend. Doug Ford, without actually coming out and saying it, but he wants to go for a fourth term. And given the lack of leadership in the Liberal Party, although the NDP leader is starting to emerge as a force with whom to be reckoned, who could beat Doug Ford if he does go for a fourth term? I don't know.
Well, I was talking about this earlier and just suggesting it. Who was his audience there, right? I mean, was it the people of Ontario? Was it the opposition? Or is it his front bench saying, anybody who has designs on my job, you can sit down now, right? So the idea that I'm, and by all accounts, he really likes the job. He loves doing that job. So, now will he change his mind 18 months from now as we get closer to another election, and will it be good for the party to have his face on the posters again? Who knows what's going to happen with Greenbelt? There's all kinds of things that are still kind of hanging out there. But the bottom line is, all indications are he's not only interested in the fourth mandate, he really likes the job. So, why would he change his mind on it?
No kidding. Dave and I enjoy our sports. The last couple of times we talked about items, Dave disagreed with me about welcoming back former Toronto athletes. I think we actually may finally agree on something. The Blue Jays have announced for their 50th season that they are giving Joe Carter a statue at the Sky Dome. I think that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I do too. And, if you're of an age and you were in town when, the 92, 93 World Series, there was nothing like it. I mean, I know you were here and we were doing it, covering it and talking all about it, everybody getting excited about it. When we talk about 50 years of Blue Jays, that was another thing. But Joe Carter has been, I think, most important, not just the guy who hit the home run and caught the last out in the first World Series. He's the guy who keeps coming back to town. When he was front and center throughout the World Series in the fall. He's a real champion and a cheerleader for not just the team, for the city. So I think absolutely. He's the guy you want, and it kind of goes in line with the the Leafs memorial with all of their all-stars in front of the rink there, and they keep adding to that list of statues on the bench. So I think that's an awesome thing to do.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Winter Olympics, and they get rolling along. Well, some events start on Thursday, but the opening ceremonies are on Friday. I'm a huge fan, but I'm kind of disappointed that there just doesn't seem to be a lot of excitement around these games. I don't know why.
Well, I think that a lot of the oxygen's been taken up around the conversation around the rink, right? I mean, there's so much that happens on the ice. And I was watching the CBC reporting last night, and there isn't running water in the arena, Gene. I mean, oh my God. What the hell? So, it's easy for the NHLers to say, I don't care what the ice is like, I can play on a pond hockey. But if you're a figure skater, and you are requiring, good edges to have your best performance, etc. And let's face it, the figure skaters have more death-defying moves than the NHLers and the world champion hockey players. Boy, a bad bit of ice in a routine could be really problematic for them in terms of safety. So I think that's taken up all the oxygen and the excitement around it, and that's a shame because it's not one of those things that's just going to be forgotten as soon as the opening ceremonies are finished. People are going to be watching this like you watch a train wreck.
I was watching the same report, about no running water, and my initial thought was, Didn't the Romans invent the viaduct?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that was more than 4 years ago.
They had it figured. Yeah.
Oh, yikes. Hey, listen, I know you've got the band back together for the podcast. Who's on? What's coming up?
We got On the Ledge coming up. We'll record that on Thursday. Today, we're rebooting our comms and strategy team on Now and Next. These are the folks who make their living advising politicians and corporations on big brand messaging. They've got some really interesting thoughts on the Poilievre speech and how it was probably informed a lot by the Davos speech of Mark Carney. So that's coming up on Now and Next this week. So we got 2 shows in the chute.
Okay. And you can check that out anywhere you get your podcast. Dave, it's always a pleasure talking to you every Tuesday morning. This is a lot of fun for me.
Thanks for having me, Gene.
There he goes. Former news director, a news director in recovery, as Dave and I say to each other. He's an investigative journalist and a podcast, and he does really, really good stuff.
Now and Next is an Eye Contact production.